Shalom. Make sure we on Shalom. All right. Shalom. I would like to begin the lesson off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim, or Kaha Kodash. Double blessing and honor to the apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone who taught me this truth through the spirit and the power of Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Shalom to the brothers out there pushing this truth with peace and sincerity, the Akim, as well as you few sisters out there listening and learning, the Akwath. To you also I say Shalom. It's your brother, Haratazaka Bar, back here with another lesson through the spirit. And in today's installment, I will be doing a lesson going into the history of feminism. This is going to be similar to the lesson I did a little over a year ago. That was similar in regards, but it was about reproductive rights and the history on eugenics. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and do, it's basically a history lesson on feminism, what it is, the effects that it's had on Jake women, and basically how it's contradictory. How it contradicts the Bible. There we go. And basically what the Lord tells us to do. So I'm going to pull out precepts in the scriptures to the best of my ability. I have some already written down that I'm going to pull out, most likely Lord willing, and whatever else pops into my mind while I read from my sources. This video is protected under the Copyright Act of 1976. Any article, clip, video, information I use in this lesson is for educational and edification purposes only. It's not for monetary gain. This video is not monetized. I'm not making any money from it. So YouTube, please do not strike this video down. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is from Wikipedia. I have a few pages and a few different graphics that I want to show y'all. Nonetheless, though, we're going to start with this. So, to understand feminism, number one, we're going to go into the history of it. Who were the people behind it, the forefathers, you could say. And then to understand feminism, there is 4 waves of feminism, which I will be talking about in this video as well. And we're also going to go into the history of it. So it says feminism. Feminism is a range of socio-political movements and ideologies that aim to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes. So let's go into gender equality, also known as sexual equality. Gender egalitarianism, or equality of the sexes, is the state of equal ease of access to resources and opportunities regardless of gender, including economic participation and decision-making, and a state of valuing different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally, also regardless of gender. It says UNICEF, an agency of the United Nations, defines gender equality as women and men and girls and boys enjoy the same rights, resources, opportunities, and protections. It does not require that girls and boys or women and men be the same or that they be treated exactly alike. And that's the thing, man. Women and men are indeed not alike, nor are they equal. And that's even concerning in the Lord's eyes, man. At the end of the day, the Lord gave the woman and the man their own responsibilities, and he made it different for a reason. But I'm going to continue on before I get that precept. Feminism holds the position that modern societies are patriarchal, which isn't a bad thing. The fact that people try and use the word patriarch or stuff like that in a negative connotation doesn't make sense to me, because at the end of the day, the Lord called the men and put men in a lot to where naturally we're supposed to lead and the women are supposed to follow. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is how we were made. Like I said, we were given different roles and different positions in order to help each other. It says patriarchy is a social system in which positions of authority are primarily held by men. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. People try and demonize patriarchy as if it's a bad thing. Like I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with that. The term patriarchy is used both in anthropology to describe a family or clan controlled by the father or eldest male or group of males, and in a feminist theory to describe a broader social structure in which men as a group dominate society. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I will say a lot of the things, or there are things in this society that benefit women that they don't benefit men at all. And likewise, there are things in society that benefit men that don't benefit women. However, you get the lines misconstrued when it comes to feminism, and the fact that society or these different movements try and make or put women in a position to where they can act or try and do the things that a man does, and vice versa. And it just doesn't work that way, because we are indeed made and built differently to where we can't do the same things, right? For instance, a woman, even from our genetic makeup, the Lord made it to where if you just look at the bone structure, I'm just giving an example. You just look at the bone structure of a woman. The Lord made it to where there's an area in her pelvis going down to where her bowels are, I believe. Matter of fact, I might even be able to just find the video. Woman versus man pelvis. Here we go. This is a man's pelvis. That's supposed to symbolize a baby, and how, like I'm saying, men and women have different roles. So even from a genetic standpoint, women can give birth. That's not something a man can do. Our bodies, quite literally, were not designed to do it. So that's just one example, but it says, let's continue on. They prioritize the male point of view that women are treated unjustly in these societies. Which I wouldn't necessarily say that women are treated unjustly in a patriarch, but they're given their roles. The Western mindset have led women and men further and further away from traditional norms and standards according to the Bible. It says efforts to change this include fighting against gender stereotypes and improving educational, professional, and interpersonal opportunities and outcomes for women. Now, I want to go back to the equality of the sexes. because I mentioned this. So, like, I mentioned this before time and time again, and I've mentioned this a few times recently. The book of 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Mashiach." So, like, now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinances as I delivered them to you. It says, "But I will have you know that the head of every man is a Mashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach is the Most High power. Every man praying or prophesying having his head covered dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head, for that is even all one as if she were shaven." So that is an example, number one, that women and men were not made to do the same things. If a man prophesies with his head covered, it's a dishonor to him. In turn, if a woman does it, it's seen as an honor to her. Let's read it in the NLT. It says, "A man dishonors his head if he covers his head while praying or prophesying. But a woman dishonors her head if she prays or prophesies without a covering on her head. For this is the same as shaving her head." And as I've mentioned in my lessons before, it is a shameful thing for a woman to be bald. It is also a curse. It says, "For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered." So let me go back to that. So, like, I didn't mean to do that. In the NLT, verse 6, it says, "Yes, if she refuses to wear a head covering, she should cut off all her hair. But since it is shameful for a woman to have her hair cut or her head shaved, she should wear a covering." Now let me go back to verse 3, because that was really my point, but I made an example out of the scriptures that were below it, showing that, once again, women and men are given different roles and responsibilities, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that society nowadays makes it seem that, or makes it a problem that women and men can't or were not designed to do the same things. Why is that a problem? 1 Corinthians 11:3. I'm going to go into the word head. It says, "But I will have you know that the head of every man is Hamashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach is the Most High power." Now, you can't... Let me just do this. Whenever a household... Let me go to this verse. It is G2776. Kaphael.
Strong's G 2776. Kephale.
Yeah, Kaphael.
Kephale.
So, this is first entry. The head, both of men and often of animals, since the loss of the head destroys life. This word is used in the phrases relating to capital and extreme punishment. Okay, we know it's not talking about that. Second entry, metaphorically, anything supreme, chief, or prominent. It says of persons, master, lord, of a husband in relation to his wife. So, a husband is considered a lord or a master to his wife. Almost like a supervisor, you could say. It says of Hamashiach, and in turn, because there's a hierarchy to things, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a hierarchy to a lot of things in life, in almost every aspect of life, right? As an employee, you have a boss, you have a supervisor, and guess what? Your supervisor has a supervisor. And guess what? That supervisor has a supervisor. Now, do you think that the employee has the same benefits or has the same responsibilities or is held to the same standard as the manager or as the CEO? No. But that's because there's a hierarchy to things. They're not equal. They don't get equal pay. They don't get the same pay because they don't have the same responsibilities. They don't have the same, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't have the same power. They don't have the same command. So just as a lord and a servant or a master and his servant aren't equal, there are baseline things that they have that are equal. But the servant isn't about to boss around the master. You're not going to see the master taking commands from the servant. I say that to say that in the Lord's eyes, he didn't make men and women equal, right? That's all I'm saying. And the point is that there's nothing wrong with that, man. This is how the Lord made it. But society have made it seem like this is such a bad thing. And that's why you have so many cases now of women hating men, right? You don't hear about misandry, but you have a lot of cases where women hate men, where they've gotten to this point where a lot of women don't want to get married. And in turn, a lot of men don't want to be married to these women because these women, they don't want to be mothers. A lot of them don't want to have children. Or they want to be out here and they want to be fast and they want to be whores and sing. And they don't want to act or portray or even try to dress modestly, be in a humble spirit, or conduct or condone themselves as wife-like material. And this has been caused a good deal, or at least some of it, from feminism. I want to go. We can go down to verse 8. We can go to verse 7 since I read verse 6. It says, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of the Most High Power, but the woman is the glory of the man." It says, "For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man." It says, "Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man." Right? And then it says, "For the first man didn't come from woman, but the first woman came from man. And man was not made for woman, but woman was made for man." Let's continue on. "For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels." So all it's saying is that the woman was brought forth from a man, and the woman was created for the man, right? The woman was created to serve the man. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but people aren't going to understand that until shit hits the fan, when things go back to normal. And once everybody wakes up from this damn fairy tale fantasy dream that they're living in, which is what we call life at the moment. I'll continue reading. It says, "Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman. But all things of God, judging yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered?" So, like I'm saying, the woman was created for the man. We were meant to be together. We've come to a point in time now where society and these social movements and all this other stuff have created a strong division between men and women. when we were once joined together, living happy, and we were united, right? Now we come to a point where that ceased to exist. But very soon, Lord willing, once these things pop off, you know what I'm saying, we'll return to that. Let's get an NLT. For this reason, and because the angels are watching, a woman should wear a covering on her head to show she is under authority. Right? That's the problem. A lot of women, they don't like to be submissive. And like I said, the things that I say about women, the bad things I say about women, I can also say about niggas as well. But I don't have much to say about the men when it comes to these type of topics, because the women are the ones that need to hear this. It says, but among the Lord's people, women are not independent of men, and men are not independent of women. So, like I'm saying, we have a lot of women nowadays who want to be independent, who would rather be independent, who don't want a man. And in society, that's looked at as a good thing. It's praised that a woman is independent from a man. Why is that? That shouldn't be a thing. Nor is it good. Yet, they celebrate these things. You a single mom, you doing it, girl. You doing it by yourself. But why are you uplifting this type of behavior? Why are you enabling it? It's not good. It says, for although the first woman came from man, every other man was born from a woman, and everything comes from God. So, let me see. Do I want to get anything else? Let me go to Genesis 2, and then I'm going to go back. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis 2 and 18, it says, you can get Genesis 2 and 17. It says, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. And how the Most High Power said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him and help meet for him, meaning the helper. We're going to jump down. That's when he created animals and things of that nature. Verse 21, and Yahweh, the Most High Power, caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Yahweh, the Most High Power, had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of a man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Meaning, when a man grows up and he gets married, he leaves his parents and starts his own family with his woman. Woman, opposite of man. Wife, woman married to a man. Female, of animals. Each, every pronoun. All right, going down. It says, originated in the late 18th century Europe, feminist movements have campaigned and continue to campaign for women's rights, including the right to vote, run for public office, which is putting them in leadership positions, work, which is taking them away from the household, and it's even putting them in a position to commit adultery, man, which is also not good. Earn equal pay, right? You have women nowadays who will complain about a man not helping, providing, paying for all the bills and things of that nature. Yet women are the same people who ask for equal pay. So in turn, men cannot provide for their family like they once did because women are working now. So they're getting paid less than what they would have gotten paid because that pay is getting allocated towards women. Own property, which they not supposed to own property because in a biblical sense, a woman once a man gets a woman, that becomes his property. Oh yeah, a man that obtained the woman obtained a possession. I think it's Salaki. Salaki Israel. I don't think it's 4 and 6. Whoso giveth ear unto her shall judge the nation, and he that attendeth unto her shall dwell securely. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Ecclesiastes 36:24. Salaki Israel. Ooh. If I wouldn't have got that, my lesson would have stopped. The water, yeah, about shit. Oh, shit. All right, we still going. Ecclesiastes 36:24. It's a lot. Ecclesiastes 36:22. Ecclesiastes 26:21. A woman will receive every man, yet is one daughter better than another. The beauty of a woman cheereth the kindness, and a man loveth nothing better. If there be kindness, meekness, and comfort in her tongue, then is not her husband like other men. He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession, a help like unto himself, and a pillar of rest. Where no hedge is, There the possession is spoiled, and he that hath no wife will wander up and down mourning. Who will trust a thief well appointed that skippeth from city to city? So who will believe a man that hath no house, and lodgeth wheresoever the night taketh him? So all I did was bring that out just to show y'all that, what was that? Owning property. Receive education, which, in my opinion, men and women in general shouldn't even go to school when it comes to that aspect. You should really be taught by your elders or by your parents, because the things that they teach in school aren't beneficial, especially nowadays, and they just teach you how to be a better worker in this society. But women that do, especially our women who receive a higher education, the further and further they go away from the Bible. Enter into contracts, have equal rights within marriage and maternity leave. Feminists have also worked to ensure access to contraception, legal abortions, which I went into that before, and social integration, and to protect women and girls from sexual assault, sexual harassment, and domestic violence, which I've spoken on the grape doctrine before. If it does come up, however, I will bring it out. Changes in female dress standards and acceptable physical activities for women have also been part of feminist movements. So promoting women to dress in a less modest way and accepting them for becoming or going into whoredom. It says many scholars consider feminist campaigns to be a main force behind major historical societal changes for women's rights, particularly in the West, which is true because the women in the West, it's a clear difference on how they dress, how they adorn themselves, how to conduct themselves versus how women over in East and other countries and cultures conduct themselves. It says where they are near universally credited with achieving women's suffrage, gender-neutral language, reproductive rights for women, which I went into that as well, including access to contraceptives and abortion, and the right to enter into contracts and own property. Although feminist advocacy is and has been mainly focused on women's rights, some argue for the inclusion of men's liberation within its aims because they believe that men are also harmed by traditional gender roles. I won't even say that. I think that men are punished sometimes, a lot of times, because of some things that women do to them, and a little bit of it is society. In the sense that we receive harsher punishments, we have to deal with a lot of things on our own, and we have to take accountability for our actions, where women don't have to necessarily deal with those same things. And once again, it's just a part of how our genders are or have been, historically looked at. Yeah, these. Feminist theory, which emerged from feminist movements, aims to understand the nature of gender inequality by examining women's social roles and lived experiences. Feminist theories have developed theories in a variety of disciplines in order to respond to issues concerning gender. I say now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, the history of it. It says numerous feminist movements and ideologies have developed over the years, representing different viewpoints and political aims. Traditionally, since the 19th century, first wave liberal feminism. Hold on, Salaki. It says traditionally, since the 19th century, first wave liberal feminism, which is what I was talking about, which sought political and legal equality through reforms within a liberal democratic framework, was contrasted with liberal-based proletarian women's movements that over time developed into socialist and Marxist feminism based on class struggle theory. Marxist feminism is a philosophical variant of feminism that incorporates and extends Marxist theory. Marxist feminism analyzes the ways in which women are exploited through capitalism and the individual ownership of private property. According to Marxist feminists, women's liberation can only be achieved by dismantling the capitalist systems in which they contend much of women's labor in which they contend much of women's labor is uncompensated. Marxist feminists extend traditional Marxist analysis by applying it to unpaid domestic labor and sex relations. I'm not going into that. Based on class struggle theory, since the 1960s, both of these traditions are also contrasted with the radical feminism that arose from the radical wing of second wave feminism, and that calls for a radical reordering of society to eliminate patriarchy. See, liberal, socialist, and radical feminism are sometimes referred to as the big three schools of feminist thought. Since the late 20th century, many newer forms of feminism have emerged. Some forms, such as white feminism and gender critical feminism, have been criticized as taking into account only white, middle class, college educated, heterosexual, or cisgender perspectives. These criticisms have led to the creation of ethnically specific or multicultural forms of feminism, such as black feminism and intersectional feminism. I'll write this down, make sure I talk about the curses as well. Deuteronomy 28. All right. So that was a lot that I just read, man. We're going to go into the history of this thing. Now, for as far as the terminology, I'm going to read down to this and to the waves. And then I'm going to go and read the history of it. It says, Mary Wollstonecraft is seen by many as a founder of feminism due to her 1792 book entitled The Vindication of the Rights of Women, in which she argues that class and private property are the basis of discrimination against women, and that women, as much as men, needed equal rights. Now, mind you, there's always been rebellious women throughout history. I could give you an example of that in the book of Esther 1:17. Like I said, this is the mindset that a lot of women have nowadays, especially the Jake women towards their men. A lot of Jake women, if y'all don't realize this, if I showed y'all that video on, now I'm not surprised at this. Of course, obviously, I know that majority of black women date black men, quote unquote, so-called black women date so-called black men. However, when they date men of the other races, it's a completely different ball game on how they treat their men and on how they conduct themselves and how they act. And that is a fact. Whenever they date a so-called black man or Jake man, Southern Jake when I say that, they tend to want to rule over their husbands and control them. And you have a lot of women, a lot of our women nowadays are starting to want to go and talk to men of other races, which of course they still talk to the Jake man, but you just have a lot of videos on the internet where black women are just shitting on a Jake man. It's lucky. Let me get to this. The book of Esther. The book of Esther 1:17, it says, "For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes when it shall be reported. The king Artaxerxes commanded Vashti, the queen, to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath." This is an example of a woman who does not want to be in subjection to her husband. So it's not like this just started happening. No. In which she urges the class and private property are the basis of discrimination against women, that women, as much as men, need equal rights. Charles Fourier, a utopian socialist and a French philosopher, is credited with having coined the word feminism in 1837. And I'll give y'all a brief little dissection of what he's talking about. It's only a paragraph and a half. It says, first appearance in France in 1871 in medicine. Thesis about men suffering from tuberculosis and having developed, according to the author Ferdinand Valère Fenois de la Cour, a feminine trait. The word feminist, inspired by its medical use, was coined by Alexander Dumas Fields in an 1872 essay referring to men who supported women's rights. In both cases, the use of the word was very negative and reflected a criticism of a so-called confusion of the sexes by women who refused to abide by the sexual division of society and challenged the inequalities between sexes. It says the concepts appeared in the Netherlands in 1872, Great Britain in the 1890s, and the United States in 1910. So that was when this whole feminism thing was brought and became mainstream, you could say. The Oxford English Dictionary dates the first appearance in English in this meaning back to 1895. Depending on the historical moment, culture and country, feminists around the world have had different causes and goals. Most Western feminist historians contend that all movements obtain working to obtain women's rights should be considered feminist movements, even when they did not or do not apply the term to themselves. Other historians assert that the term should be limited to the modern feminist movement and its descendants. Those historians use the label proto-feminist to describe earlier movements. And the feminism of old is definitely different than the feminism of new, which is why we have to go into, the different waves. So the history of the modern Western feminist movement is divided into multiple waves. The first comprised women's suffrage movements of the 19th and early 20th centuries, promoting women's rights to vote. The second wave, the women's liberation movement, began in the 1960s and campaigned for legal and social equality for women in or around 1992. The third wave was identified, characterized by a focus on individuality and diversity. Additionally, some have argued for the existence of a fourth wave starting around 2012, which has used social media to combat sexual harassment and violence against women. And grape culture is best known for the Me Too movement. Me Too is a social movement and awareness campaign against sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and grape culture in which survivors led by the voices of women, especially public figures, share their experiences of sexual abuse or sexual harassment. It says the phrase Me Too was initially used in this context on social media around 2006 on MySpace by SA survivor and activist Tarana Burke. I'm not surprised that it's a Jake woman. The hashtag MeToo was used starting in 2017 as a way to draw attention to the magnitude of the problem. MeToo is meant to empower those who have been essayed through empathy, solidarity, and strength in numbers. By visibly demonstrating how many have experienced essay and harassment, especially in the workplace. This is my thing, right? When it comes to stuff like that. Men are never, this is a movement for women, right? As if SA and other things don't happen to men as well, right? Women, it's possible for a woman to essay a man, but you don't never hear anything about that, right? Violence against women, but we don't never hear about the women that set niggas up and get them killed and do all these other things and all these other heinous acts that women do to men. It just gets blown under the rug. Okay. That would be my problem. Mary Wollstonecraft, 1759 to 1797. She's pretty much like our Margaret Sanger. All right, we're going to go into the history now. It says the history of feminism comprises the narratives, chronological or thematic, of the movements and ideologies which have aimed at equal rights for women. While feminists around the world have differed in causes, goals, and intentions depending on time, culture, and country, most Western feminist historians assert that all movements that work to obtain women's rights should be considered feminist movements, even when they did not or do not apply the term to themselves. Some other historians limit the term feminist to the modern feminist movement and its progeny, and uses the label proto-feminist to describe earlier movements. It says modern Western feminist history is conventionally split into time periods or waves. each with slightly different aims based on prior progress. Mind you, they call this modern Western feminist history. These women in these other countries, not to say that they don't believe in feminism, or that's not a thing over there, but it's more popularized, glorified over here in the West. You can tell. It says the first waves of feminism of the 19th and early 20th century focused on overturning legal inequalities, particularly addressing issues of women's suffrage. It says it was a period of feminist activity and thought that occurred during the 19th and early 20th century throughout the Western world. It focused on legal issues, primarily on securing women's right to vote. The term is often used synonymously with the kind of feminism espoused by the liberal women's rights movement, with roots in the first wave, while organizations such as the International Alliance of Women and its affiliates. This feminist movement still focuses on equality from a mainly legal perspective. The first wave of feminism itself was coined by journalist Martha Lear. Let me see. We're not really going to go into the first wave. We're going to go into the second wave, third wave, and fourth wave, though. It says, although the waves construct has been commonly used to describe the history of feminism, the concept has also been criticized by non-white feminists for ignoring and erasing the history between the waves by choosing to focus solely on a few famous figures on the perspective of a white, bourgeois woman, and on popular events, and for being racist and colonialist. It says the second wave of feminism was a period of feminist activity that began in the early 1960s and lasted roughly 2 decades, ending with the feminist sex wars in the early 1980s and being replaced by third wave feminism in the early 1990s. It occurred throughout the Western world and aimed to increase women's equality by building on the feminist gains of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Feminist sex wars, also known as the lesbian sex wars or porn wars, are collective debates amongst feminists regarding a number of issues broadly relating to sexuality and sexual activity. Differences of opinion on matters of sexuality deeply polarized the feminist movement. The debates took place between leading feminist thinkers of the late 1970s and early 1980s and continue to influence debates amongst feminists to this day. The sides were characterized by anti-porn feminists and sex-positive feminist groups with disagreements regarding sexuality, including pornography, erotica, prostitution, lesbian sexual practices, the role of trans women in the lesbian community, sadomasochism. I don't even know what that is. Oh, okay. And other sexual matters. The feminist movement was deeply divided as a result of these debates. Many historians view the feminist sex wars as having been the end of the second wave feminist era, as well as the herald of the third wave, which began in the early 1990s. Okay, I see what this is. Well, number one, sex is a beautiful thing that was created by the Lord, but it should indeed be done in private. And prostitution is not. We can get something on that. Prostitution has been around for forever, but it's not a good thing nonetheless. You should not prostitute thy daughter to be a whore. Ephesians 5:5. For this ye know that no whoremonger, nor unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater, hath any inheritance of the kingdom of Mashiach and of the Most High Power. And a whoremonger is a seller of women.
Strong's G 4205. Parnas. Parnas.
A man who prostitutes his body to another's lust for hire. A male prostitute. A man who indulges in unlawful sexual intercourse or fornicator. Shalaki. I said a pimp. Prostitute. Leviticus 19:29. Do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom and the land become full of wickedness. Right, which we've reached that point in time where it's become like that. At the same time, though, women should not be, you know what I'm saying, lesbians neither. Second wave feminism built on first wave feminism and broadened the scope of debate to include a wider range of issues: sexuality, family, domesticity, the workplace, reproductive rights. Right, we went into that. De facto inequalities and social legal inequalities. First wave feminism typically advocated for formal equality. Second wave feminism advocated for substantive equality. It was a movement focused on critiquing patriarchal or male-dominated institutions and cultural practices throughout society. Second wave feminism also brought attention to issues of domestic violence and marital rape, created a rape crisis centers and women's shelters, and brought about changes in custody law and divorce law, which that goes into child support and things of that nature, which once again women benefit off of. And most times women get custody of their children, which allows them to control the dynamic of the family. Feminist-owned bookstores, credit unions, and restaurants were among the key meeting spaces and economic engines of the movement. We can go into marital rape. Let's see what the Bible says about this, because there is no such thing as that. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1, it says, Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. And that does not mean that a man is limited to having one wife, but a woman is limited to having one man. So if a man has more than one wife, he needs to deal and address her as his wife. You know what I'm saying? This is my wife. And this other woman, she's my wife as well, right? Doing the things that he needs to do as a husband and treating her as a wife. However, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not going off in the scriptures to have more than one woman or more than one wife. It's not that beneficial in this kingdom that we're in right now. But some brothers are able to maintain that. It says, Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband, which is my point. The wife hath not power over her own body, but the husband. And likewise, also the husband hath not power of it, power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again. And Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Basically, what they're saying is that when you become married, your body no longer belongs to you. So if your man wants some play as your wife, as the wife, you're supposed to give it to him. And likewise, if your wife wants some rod, as the man, you're supposed to give it to her. Now, if you all come to an agreement and you say, okay, you say, hey, baby, look, I think we need to take a break. Let's take things slow. You know what I'm saying? Or I want to just take a break just so, you know what I'm saying, we can have a break from each other. And y'all come in agreement with each other, there's nothing wrong with that. Or even if your woman comes to you like that, hey, babe, I know we do it often. I think we should take a break. Right? Y'all come into agreement. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But for you to say, no, I don't want to do it, yet your woman wants some, you're in the wrong. And likewise, if your woman and your man wants some, and you say, oh, no, I don't want to do it, you're in the wrong. So it goes both ways. We can get this in the NLT. Actually, let's get that word benevolence first. Goodwill, kindness. All right. It says in the NLT, the husband should fulfill his wife's salaki. Yeah, come. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Because at the end of the day, guess what we were put her for? To be fruitful and to multiply. It says, is the act of sexual intercourse with one spouse without the spouse's consent, usually done to a wife by her husband. Yet they not gonna, like I said, they don't have anything like this for a man, right? And this shouldn't even be a thing. This is something that was created by the Edomites. That goes against the Bible once again. But now, of course, are there laws concerning grape? Yes, there is. Or Salaki, it's not Leviticus, it's Deuteronomy 22. What the Lord says concerning grape. Deuteronomy 22 and 22. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So shalt thou put away evil from Israel. And why is that? Because the man committed adultery. When it comes to adultery laws, if a woman is betrothed, meaning engaged, or married to a man, they cannot sleep with another man. And for a man, if he lays, or if he has a woman and he lays, if he has a woman or if he doesn't have a woman, If he's single or if he engaged with a woman, it doesn't matter. If he lays with a woman that has a man already, he's committed adultery. But if he has a woman, or if he's single and he lays with a woman, let's say if he has a woman already, and he lays with a woman, and she's single, she isn't seeing anybody, she's not married, that's not adultery. Let's get in the NLT, verse 22. If a man is discovered committing adultery, both he and the woman must die. In this way you will purge Israel of such evil. Exactly. If we still had laws like this, a lot of people would have been dead by now. Because that is a huge problem right now in society. Is women fucking on other niggas when they already have a nigga. And men fucking on women that already have a man. It says if a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city, and lie with her, then ye shall bring them both out unto the gate of that city, and ye shall stone them with stones, that they die. The damsel because she cried not, being in the city, and the man because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife. So thou shalt put away evil from among you. This is a very sensitive topic for a lot of Israelites because their spirit can't receive this scripture. I'm reading in NLT. Suppose a man meets a young woman, which that's what damsel means, a virgin who is engaged to be married, right? So she already has a man that she's seeing. They might not have slept or laid down yet, but they're still together. And he has sexual intercourse with her. If this happens within a town, you must take both of them to the gates of that town and stone them to death. The woman is guilty because she did not scream for help, meaning she liked it. The man must die because he violated another man's wife. In this way, you will purge this evil from among you. But if a man find a betrothed damsel, meaning she's engaged, in the field, and the man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. Right, so it says in the NLT, but if the man meets the engaged woman out in the country and he grapes her, then only the man must die. So that's part of the law when it comes to grape. We're going to continue reading on. But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her. It says, if a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and shall be his wife. Because he hath humbled her, he may not put her away all his days. A man shall not take his father's wife, nor discover his father's skirt. All right. And it says, and brought about changes in custody law and divorce law. If a woman go not your way, write her a bill of divorce. So, like, let me go. custody law. Oh yeah, let me go to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28 and 56 says, the tender and delicate woman among you, which will not. Let me get this. Matter of fact, first, let me play this video for y'all.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility, and then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But why would you want to, though? It's harder. You're doing it by yourself. If you had another person there to help you, it wouldn't be as difficult.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so, you know, it really, male figures are not substantially important in the family.
The male figure is not substantially important in the family. Like it reads, man, the Lord did not impart wisdom unto women. That's okay, though. Once again, it's part of the curses. Deuteronomy 28:56, the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for one of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates. It says in NLT, the most tender and delicate woman among you, so delicate she will not so much as touch the ground with her foot, will be selfish toward the husband she loves and toward her own son or daughter. She will hide from them the afterbirth and the new baby she has born, so that she herself can secretly eat them. She will have nothing else to eat during the siege and terrible distress that your enemy will inflict on all your towns. Hey, like it reads, man born of women are a few days. Man born of women are a few days. And our women would rather raise a child by themselves so that they can mold them, build them up, and have them for their own. It says Genesis 3:16, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception in sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. It says, then he said to the woman, I will sharpen the pain of your pregnancy, and in pain you will give birth, and you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. Going into the third wave of feminism, it says refers to diverse strains of feminist activity seen by third wavers themselves, both as a connotation of the second wave and as a response to its perceived failures. As a matter of fact, so like I should have got this after I read that, after we watched that video. Let me just show y'all the graphic. I'm not gonna read all this. Pew Research. Marriage rates vary widely by race and ethnicity. Education. Cohabiting, married, 57% white, 33% black, 48% Hispanic, 63% Asian. The other races marry far more often and are together than our race of women. Marriage by race. 31% married, 43, 53, 59. Separated 3, 3, 1, 1. Divorced 12, 8, 11, and 5. Widowed 5, 3, 6, and 4. Never married 50%, 43%, 28%, 31%. Oh, let me get that. So like this is gonna be a good one. Black women. Black women more likely to be married than white women until 1970. Then, 6% never married among women aged 35 and older by race. It spiked after 1970. And that's not surprising, man. It goes into all the things that I've been talking about today. How this whole thing have affected different race groups differently. Going into the third wave says refers to diverse strains of feminist activity seen by third wavers themselves, both as a continuation of the second wave and as a response to its perceived failures. A feminist movement that began in the early 90s, it was prominent in the decades prior to the fourth wave, grounded in the civil rights advances of the second wave. Gen X, third wave feminists born in the 1960s and 70s, embraced diversity and individualism in women. Didn't I just read that they don't have to be independent, yet they choose to, and it makes things harder for themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, who's gonna need who first? The man gonna need the. At the end of the day, we both need each other. I'm just gonna put that out there. But who's gonna need who first, the man or the woman? Who's more capable of being by themselves? And sought to redefine. So in actuality, the women are only hurting themselves in this case. When they want to be individual, independent, that's okay. And sought to redefine what it meant to be feminist. The third wave saw the emergence of new feminist currents and theories such as intersectionality, sex positivity, vegetarian, ecofeminism, trans feminism, and postmodern feminism. According to the feminist scholar Elizabeth Evans, the confusion surrounding what constitutes third wave feminism is in some respects its redefining feature. The third wave is traced to Anita Hill's televised testimony in 1991 to an all-male, all-white Senate Judiciary Committee that the Judge Clarence Thomas had sexually harassed her. That's what I thought it was, that Clarence Thomas. The term third wave is credited to Rebecca Walker, who responded to Thomas' appointment. Yeah, I'm not going to continue reading all that. going to go into sex positivity movement and centering on the idea that sexual freedom is an essential component of women's freedom. What does it mean by sexual freedom? Can refer to a personal or norm or social norm. Most cultures have social norms regarding sexuality and define normal sexuality to consist only of certain sex acts between individuals who meet specific age criteria, non-consanguinity, versus incest. Okay, race/ethnicity versus interracial relationships, which is nothing wrong with that. However, Jake women are not supposed to marry or deal with the other men's races, but Jake men can. Everyone except for Canaanite women. And or social role and socioeconomic status, which a lot of that has went into turning into body positivity and women being able to sleep around with multiple partners, liking up to a man, when that isn't a good thing. Once again, just deteriorating themselves. There's a lot of this stuff just be hurting themselves. That's why you have a lot of women out here that are crazy, have different mental problems and things of that nature. Fourth wave feminism expands on the third wave's focus on intersectionality, emphasizing body positivity, trans inclusivity, and an open discourse about grape culture in the social media era. It says began around 2012 and is characterized by a focus on the empowerment of women, the use of internet tools, and intersectionality. According to Rosemary Clark Parsons, digital platforms have allowed feminist movements to become more connected and visible. A lot of these women that consider themselves feminists be having OnlyFans, and I'm not saying these are all of them, but some of them definitely be having OnlyFans, be selling pussy. So they're just, at the end of the day, prostitutes and whores. A lot of these women require you to pay for dates and require you to pay for pussy. But this is supposed to be empowering women, though. But then when you tell a woman, oh, I think you should dress more modestly, I think you should adorn yourself in this way and that way, and you showing a sense of respect or that you care about the woman, then it's a problem. You're seen as the problem. Okay. Allowing activists to reach a global audience and act on it in a real time. This is just in the we'll see moments. We'll see how this affects or how this profits them very soon, this whole feminist shit. Wave sees greater gender equality by focusing on gender norms and the marginalization of women in society. These online tools open up the doors for empowerment for all women by giving opportunities for diverse voices, particularly those from marginalized communities, to contribute to a wider range of people pushing for a more inclusive movement. It said discussions about how feminism has affected the black family often highlight a central conflict between mainstream, historically white-centric feminist narratives and the unique experiences of black women and communities. Critics argue that certain aspects of the feminist movement have inadvertently deepened divisions and diverted attention from systemic issues like racism and economic disenfranchisement, which are widely considered the primary drivers of black family challenges. And that's true. Tensions between mainstream feminism and the black community. Black feminism typically advocates for the collective empowerment of the black community as a whole, not just women at the expense of men. Proponents emphasize that supporting black women who face intersecting oppressions of racism and sexism ultimately strengthens the entire. Get the fuck out of here. Divergent priorities. Mainstream feminism is past waves often focused on white middle-class women's issues such as the desires to work outside the home, a reality already common for black women throughout history due to economic necessity. Black women's activism centered on the intersection of racial and gender equality, intersectionality, a focus often marginalized by white feminist leaders. Perceptions of men. Some argue that mainstream feminist rhetoric can position black men as patriarchal oppressors, which some believe undermines unity within the black community and ignores the shared experience of systemic racism. This narrative, critics suggest, can lead to a breakdown in black male-female relationships and discourage family formation. Because if y'all don't know, in the early 1900s, our culture was thriving, and we had cities and towns that we was building. We still had two-parent households and children in them and whatnot. Then this came in, you know what I'm saying, the crack epidemic hit, and shit went to shambles. And the fact that they were destroying our neighborhoods, too, in cities. It says, focus on the nuclear family ideal. The promotion of a Western traditional nuclear family ideal has been critiqued for pathologizing black families that often due to structural and historical forces do not fit that mold. Example, female-headed households, which they were a part of. They just not going to say that. This is one of the ways that they created that, though. Oh, I thought I had this, Shalaki. I ain't gonna go into that. Who's the mother of feminism? Okay, we done hit all my topics that I want to talk about, man. I know that was a lot. Anyways, with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Haha Kodash, double blessing and honor to the apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone who taught me this truth through the spirit and the power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to those out there listening and watching. And until next time, I say Shalom, Israel, Shalom. And as always, we're one day close to the kingdom, man. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Shalom.